My name is Emily Carson. And the night my own mother raised a glass to celebrate my brother, while pretending I didn't exist, was the night everything in our family finally broke open. Thanksgiving had always felt like a performance in our house. Perfect plates, perfect smiles, perfect lies. Every year, the same ritual repeated. Laughter loud enough to hide resentment, compliments sweet enough to cover neglect. But this year, something felt colder the moment I stepped through the door. Not different in a loud way. Different in the quiet, unsettling way that makes your chest tighten before anything even happens. I stood in the doorway holding the pumpkin tart I had baked from scratch, still warm inside its glass dish. The smell of cinnamon clung to my hands, but no one noticed. My mother barely glanced in my direction before turning back to refill someone's wine glass. No hug. No welcome. No happy Thanksgiving. Just the faint sound of her heels clicking across the kitchen floor, as if my arrival was nothing more than background noise. Inside the living room, laughter erupted around my younger brother Ryan. He stood at the center of everything like he always did, smiling, joking, accepting praise like oxygen. My aunt clapped him on the back while my uncle bragged loudly about Ryan's new promotion at Crestfall PR. His fiancée laughed beside him, glowing with pride, as if success itself had chosen him personally. And me? I hovered near the wall, like an afterthought. Dinner was called a few minutes later. Everyone moved toward the dining room in a comfortable rhythm, sliding into their seats as if each place had been carefully chosen. I followed behind them, balancing the tart carefully, trying not to feel the familiar knot forming in my chest. Then I saw the table. 11 chairs. 10 place cards. One name missing. Mine. For a moment, I thought it had to be a mistake. Maybe they forgot. Maybe there was another card somewhere. I scanned the table again, slowly, carefully, hoping my eyes had simply missed it. They hadn't. No one noticed me standing there. No one offered to move. No one even asked where I would sit. So I walked to the wall and grabbed the metal folding chair leaning against it. The sound of its legs scraping across the hardwood floor echoed through the room like something breaking. Loud. Uncomfortable. Impossible to ignore. Yet still no one said anything. I placed the chair at the far end of the table and sat down quietly, forcing myself to breathe through the tightness in my throat. Plates passed from hand to hand. Conversations flowed. Laughter bounced across the room. Ryan's promotion. Ryan's condo. Ryan's future. Ryan's brilliance. Every word circled around him like planets around the sun. And I sat there, eating silently, like a guest who had wandered into the wrong house. The food tasted fine, but it felt heavy in my mouth like swallowing stones. I looked up once, hoping my mother might glance in my direction, maybe offer even the smallest smile. She didn't. Or maybe she chose not to. Then came the moment that changed everything. My mother stood slowly, lifting her wine glass into the air. The room quieted instantly, as if everyone already knew what was coming. I just want to say, she began proudly, her voice thick with celebration, how proud I am this year, especially of the only child who actually made us proud. Every head turned toward Ryan. Applause filled the room. My chest tightened. Something deep inside me cracked. Not loudly. Not dramatically. Just enough to let years of silence start leaking out. I stood slowly, my hands steady even though my heartbeat pounded against my ribs like thunder. Thanks, I said quietly. The word cut through the applause like a blade. For finally saying it out loud. Then I turned toward the door. I hadn't planned to make a scene. I just wanted to leave before the pressure inside my chest turned into tears. Before humiliation swallowed me whole again like it had so many times before. But halfway to the door, I heard his voice. Wait. My father. 3 decades of silence, and suddenly he spoke. I turned slowly, confused. His eyes locked onto mine, steady and calm. Tell them what you did, he said. The room froze. Every face turned toward me. My mother lowered her glass, her confidence slipping for the first time that night. Ryan frowned. What is he talking about? He asked nervously. I looked at my father again. He nodded. Not forcing. Not demanding. Just giving permission. And in that moment, something inside me shifted. Years of swallowed words pushed their way to the surface. You all want to toast Ryan, I said slowly. My voice didn't shake. But maybe you should toast me first. Silence filled the room. Because I'm the reason he got that job. Gasps spread across the table. Ryan laughed nervously. That's ridiculous, he said quickly. But his voice sounded thinner now. Less confident. I met his eyes. The company wasn't hiring, I continued calmly. There was a hiring freeze. You had no chance of getting in. The room grew colder. I sent your resume directly to someone I mentored, I added. I rewrote your cover letter. I fixed your experience. I made the call that got you the interview. Ryan's smile vanished completely. My mother's face hardened. That's not true, she snapped. It is, I replied quietly. He didn't even know what PR stood for when he first sent me his draft. The silence became suffocating. No laughter. No applause. Just truth, hanging in the air like smoke. And for the first time in my life, no one interrupted me. Back last year, I asked. My father lifted his head slowly. I sent groceries every week for 2 months, I continued. Quietly, without telling anyone. My aunt blinked. My uncle shifted in his chair. And when the IRS put a lien on this house, I added, my voice steady. You all said it was a miracle when it disappeared. My father frowned slightly. That wasn't a miracle, I said softly. That was me. The words landed heavily. My mother scoffed. If you had that kind of money, she snapped, why didn't you help Ryan when his car broke down? That question told me everything I needed to know. Not gratitude. Not recognition. Just more expectation. That's exactly the problem, I said quietly. It's never enough. No matter what I do, it never counts. My father leaned forward slowly, his voice softer now. You paid the lien? He asked. I nodded. With what? He asked again. My savings, I replied. All of it. His face changed then. Not dramatically, but enough that I noticed. Something behind his eyes cracked open. Something that had been buried under years of silence. You shouldn't have had to do that, he murmured. I know, I said. But someone had to. My mother stood abruptly, her chair scraping loudly against the floor. I need air, she snapped. Then she walked out of the room. Ryan followed her seconds later, his face pale. And suddenly, the room felt emptier than before. Not because people had left, but because the truth had arrived. I stepped outside onto the porch, letting the cold November air hit my face. It stung slightly, but it felt cleaner than the heavy silence inside. I didn't expect Ryan to follow me. But he did. Emily, he said quietly. His voice sounded different now. Less confident. Less polished. More human. I need to admit something, he said. I crossed my arms. Go ahead. He hesitated before speaking. I knew, he said finally. My chest tightened. Knew what? About the job, he admitted. Not at first, but later. HR mentioned your name during a call. I stared at him. And you said nothing? I asked. He shook his head slowly. I wanted to believe I earned it, he said. I didn't want to admit I needed help. That hurt more than I expected. Not because he succeeded, but because he let me disappear. You didn't just stay silent, I said quietly. You let them erase me. He looked down. I know, he whispered. For the first time, I believed him. Not because of his words, but because of his expression. Then he said something that made my heart stop. There's something else, he added. My stomach tightened. What? He glanced back toward the house. Mom's been talking to a realtor, he said quietly. I frowned. What do you mean? She's planning to sell the house, he continued. My breath caught. Without telling Dad. The world tilted slightly. Not physically. Emotionally. I had drained my savings to save that house. And she was planning to sell it behind his back. She picked out a condo already, Ryan added quietly. She wants to move in with Aunt Linda. I felt anger rise inside me, slow, sharp, undeniable. Not loud anger. Cold anger. The kind that settles deep into your bones. She was going to blindside him, I whispered. Ryan nodded. And just then, the front door opened. Dad stepped outside. You should both come back inside, he said quietly. There's something I need to say. When we walked back into the dining room, the atmosphere had completely changed. No laughter. No chatter. Just tension. Dad stood at the head of the table now, where Mom usually sat. And for the first time in my life, he didn't look uncertain. He looked determined. I've made a lot of mistakes as a father, he began. His voice was steady, but the biggest one was staying silent. No one moved. No one spoke. He turned toward me. Emily carried this family more than any of us realized, he said. My chest tightened. She paid the lien, he continued. She helped keep this house standing. She supported us when I couldn't work. Gasps rippled through the room. And while she was doing all of that, he added slowly, we were busy applauding someone else. Ryan lowered his head. Mom re-entered the room just then. Her expression froze when she heard his words. You're giving her the house? She snapped suddenly. Dad didn't hesitate. I'm giving her what she already saved, he replied calmly. Then he placed a folder on the table. I spoke to our lawyer, he said. Starting next month, this house will legally belong to Emily and me. Silence exploded across the room. Real shock. Real disbelief. Mom's face turned pale. You can't do that, she snapped. I already did, Dad replied quietly. And just like that, everything shifted. Not loudly, not dramatically, but permanently. Mom sank into her chair. For the first time in her life, she had no response, no control, no script, just silence. People began leaving soon after. No laughter, no jokes, just quiet coats and whispered goodbyes. Ryan stayed behind, helping clear the table. Not for show, not for praise, just quietly. Dad poured 2 glasses of wine, one for himself, one for me. We didn't toast. We didn't need to. Ryan approached me slowly. I don't know if I can fix everything, he said, but I want to try. I studied his face carefully. Not perfect, not polished, just honest. We'll see, I replied. And for the first time in years, that felt like enough. Later that night, I stepped outside alone. The cold air wrapped around me again, but this time, it didn't feel harsh. It felt freeing. I turned back to look at the house. The same house where I had once felt invisible. The same house where I dragged a folding chair to my own family table. But now, it looked different. Because now, I wasn't leaving empty. I had spoken. I had been heard. And most importantly, I had finally stopped disappearing. The next morning, I woke up in my apartment like any other day. Made breakfast. Brewed coffee. Watched sunlight creep slowly across the kitchen floor. But something inside me felt lighter. Calmer. Steadier. My phone buzzed. A message from a cousin. We were wrong about you. I'm sorry. I stared at the screen for a moment. Then typed back. Don't be sorry. Just be better. I set the phone down, took a bite of toast, and let the silence settle around me. Not the silence of being ignored, but the silence of peace. And for the first time in my life, I wasn't fighting to be seen. I already was. Ryan didn't speak at first. He just stared at the table like the polished wood might swallow him whole if he looked long enough. The confidence he wore like armor all evening had cracked, and for the first time in years he looked uncertain, smaller somehow. You're lying, he said finally, but the words lacked strength. They didn't carry the usual certainty he relied on when everyone automatically believed him. I'm not lying, I replied calmly. You begged me to help you, remember? You said you didn't know how to word your resume. You said you were scared they wouldn't even read it. Ryan's jaw tightened. My mother crossed her arms defensively. Why are you doing this, Emily? Why can't you let your brother have one moment without making it about yourself? Her words stung. Not because they were new, but because they were familiar. I had heard versions of them my entire life. But this time, I didn't swallow them. You mean like when I graduated college early with honors, I said quietly. And you told me the ceremony wasn't worth attending? The room grew still. Or when I won the state technology scholarship, I continued. And you called it a cute little computer thing? Ryan looked up now. Not angry. Confused. My mother's lips pressed into a tight line, her face flushing red. That's not the same, she snapped. No. Irreplaceably. It never is. Because Ryan's small wins are celebrated like miracles, while my achievements are treated like background noise. No one laughed this time. No one moved. Ryan shifted uncomfortably in his seat, his fingers tapping nervously against the table. I didn't know, he said quietly. You didn't want to know, I answered. Because that was the truth. It was easier for him to believe he earned everything than admit someone else helped build the road beneath his feet. Silence wrapped around the room like a heavy blanket. Then I spoke again, not louder, just clearer. Do you remember when Dad hurt his